Discovery and ISS, this is Houston. Are you ready for the public event?
We are ready, Houston.
JSC PAO, this is Houston. Please call Discovery and ISS for a voice check.
Discovery ISS, this is JSC PAO. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station, Rob.
Be with you, Scott and crew, and we'll start off questions with Robert Perlman.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com with a question for Commander Steve Lindsay and his Discovery crewmates. Outside of times when the media, like myself, ask about this being Discovery's last mission, how prevalent has the finality of this flight been during the course of your mission? Have there been specific times where the legacy and history of the vehicle has struck you?
Well, that's a difficult question. We've been very busy during our mission, as all shuttle missions are and space station missions, and so mostly we've been probably spending 95% of our time to 99% on just doing the work and getting the work done. And so when you're really busy like that, you're focusing on doing the task correctly, making sure you get everything done how it's supposed to done and don't miss anything. However, there are times, I know personally, when I've been reflecting about it being the last mission and what a wonderful vehicle it is. And probably, we were coming up and docking, and when you look out the cupola windows, you can look right into Discovery's payload bay and see the wings and see Discovery written on the wings. And times like that, I really reflect about what a great vehicle it's been, 39 missions, nearly 1 year on orbit, and think about all the things that vehicle has done, and it's just really inspiring to me and kind of bittersweet and quite frankly sad that knowing that when we land, that will be it for this vehicle.
Thank you. And to follow up on that, a question for Steve Bowen and Al Drew. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and through your helmet cam, we got to see when you took a glance at Discovery docked to the station during your spacewalks. Would you, one or both of you, describe what it was like to see Discovery there and reflect on its past 365 days in space?
A lot of us repeated what Steve had from the cupola. Just to have Discovery right there and filling our entire visor up close and personal, you realize it's just a magnificent ship. It's huge, it's complex, just a wonderful, completely capable vehicle. And to be out there working on and around and near it is just a privilege. To be part of the legacy of Discovery is just, like I said, just seems like a blessing.
This is Gerhard Daumer, the German Aerospace Center and Space Expo Association. Question for Al Drew. What was the most difficult and the most exciting moment during your EVAs?
That's easy. They were both the same. When I first exited the airlock on my first EVA, we were over top the jungles. It looked like it was maybe South America, the Amazon basin somewhere. Just beautiful, the clouds, the river valleys down there, all the greenery. And I had to remind myself that I had work to do and I couldn't just take in the scenery. So it was exciting, and it was difficult to tear my eyes away from that and actually focus on getting things ready for our tasks ahead.
Question for Paolo. You accomplished about half of your long-duration mission. What was your most challenging task, and did you have any surprises, and what was your most exciting moment so far?
Well, it's been a pleasure so far here. We've been spent 2 months, Expedition 26. And I think the most challenging time here is there is not really a time. I mean, the challenge is when I look at a procedure for the first time, it looks very complex, and I try to understand and interpret it, try to do it without making mistakes, and sometimes I do. So I think those are for me, the most challenging times. But as usual, with familiarity, we're repeating things. Things get familiar, and we get to do it with no problems. And of course, we always have the ground control, mission control helping us and keeping us out of troubles.
This is Jill Tolk representing the Cohasset Mariner in Massachusetts. A question for the East Coast, Steve. What has been the most challenging part and the most rewarding part of your unexpected shuttle flight?
I think the most challenging part was trying to get up to speed to understand the EVAs, and then even more so trying to get up to speed with everything else that goes on a shuttle flight, and where my tasks would be and what they were and how familiar I was with them and how much more training I had to have. So that was clearly the most difficult part of it. The best part really was, getting to work with the crew. It's 4 of my classmates from 2000 and Commander Steve Lindsay, and that's been great. Great crew. Just having the ability to spend time with them, it's been fantastic. And then getting up here with the ISS crew, it's been really the best part of it.
Thanks for the good word, Steve-O. Now a question for the West Coast Steve and for Eric Bowe. What good Bowen anecdote from this week could you share with newspaper readers in his hometown?
We're consulting. Hang on. I think our favorite Steve Bowen story for this mission so far was, and I'm sure there are more to come, was when Steve was taking a pump module off of a transporter on the truss segment. EVA and Mike Barrett and Scott Kelly were driving him on the robotic arm. About the time they released that pump module, which is about several hundred pounds, for Steve to take in his arm so they could fly him over to where it belonged, the entire space station robotic arm crashed, and which means he was stuck there holding this payload for what seemed like a really long time for him, but actually the crew did a great job reconfiguring to an alternate robotic workstation to get it back alive pretty quickly. But Steve was stuck there for probably, 30, 35 minutes holding this pump module loose, and so it gave us an opportunity to joke with him and kind of make fun of him while he was out there stuck with nowhere to go.
Hey, and I just want to add one story for Steve, and that's just from today. We're outfitting the PMM, the giant module that the Discovery crew brought to us, and one of the steps in that is to actually just install some brackets, and there's 6 bolts on every bracket. But I will tell you, there's only one tiny little tool on the space station here that can do it. It's a tiny, tiny little workspace to do it in, and Steve has been in there all morning long doing every one of these bolts. I think there are about 60 of them. I think he just finished, and so that's the kind of guy he is. He works in big spaces, small spaces, and he just always gets stuff done.
She's being nice.
One more is what's great about this is Steve flew with me on STS-126, and just like Katie was just talking about, Steve and I we're working together on the racks in there in the PMM, so it was a pleasure to watch him get to work just like the last flight.
Mark Carreau for Aviation Week, and I have a couple of questions. The first is for Scott Kelly. Could you sort of explain how the extra time that Discovery is spending at the space station benefits the station ops the most?
Well, in the original plan, they were not going to have much involvement in getting PMM basically emptied out of a lot of the hardware that needs to be disposed of on HTV. So when they were going to leave, we were going to really be in a time crunch to get all this, all these metal structures and foam and stuff that we want to dispose of in HTV, because HTV has to leave at a certain time. So by having the extension gives us 2 extra days of 6 people, which is a lot of crew time to get all that stuff or some of it done before they leave, and then it kind of it just helps maximize our time post undocking for things like science and other activities we have to perform on board the space station on a daily basis.
Thanks. And could someone explain where Express Rack 8 ends up at the end of this process? And it's my understanding that's the last of the express racks, and if anybody wants to comment on the significance of that for science activities, that'd be great. Thank you.
Well, Express Rack 8 is right next to Steve Bowen here, right to my left, and we moved that this morning. And yes, it is the last Express Rack. I'm not actually familiar with what kind of science Express Rack 8 is going to be performing. Right now it has a Merlin, which is a small refrigerator, a Glacier, which is another refrigerator, and those things generally keep science samples, human science samples in them, as well as some other lockers. And I think Katie might have a better idea. I'll pass the mic to her.
Well, I was going to say what's great about an Express Rack is that it's actually not specific. It's very modular. It's the size of a refrigerator, and it has drawers that are then interchangeable that can contain either stowage or, more importantly, experiments that need power, need cooling, things like that. And so now that we've got the big refrigerator size thing in place through Discovery, smaller locker size things can come up, and so we can have payload after payload in this facility because everything is provided in an Express Rack. So it's pretty exciting to have yet another on board. It gives us a lot of different locations for small experiments.
Hi, Denise Chow at space.com with a question for either Steve Lindsay or Eric Bowe. When Discovery does its fly around after undocking, I was wondering if either or both of you could speak to the significance of performing that maneuver with Discovery for the final time, and in doing so, seeing the space station completed with a vehicle that's been so instrumental in its construction. Thank you.
Well, we've been talking about the long history of the space shuttle, and it's a privilege to get the opportunity to undock and do the fly around the space station. The International Space Station has every partner represented with the different modules on board right now. We have ATV, which is from the European Space Agency, and the HTV from the Japanese JAXA. And also, after we finish the fly around, what's amazing is how big the structure is. Right now, when we're docked, we're more than 1 million pounds. And so to actually fly around the vehicle, take pictures, and marvel at that the majority of the U.S. segment was brought up piece by piece by the space shuttle will be truly amazing.
Hi, Eric Berger with the Houston Chronicle. Congratulations on a successful mission. A question maybe for Nicole or someone else who wants to tackle it, but I don't think people on the ground can sort of fully appreciate what the living space is like in the space station. So now that it's complete, maybe you could talk a little bit in terms that people can understand how large it is and how much space you have to move around in.
And just to start off, and Mike Barrett points this out, is that this space station here now is the largest pressurized volume in space in history. It's huge. I mean, I use a word my son uses all the time, which is ginormous. We have 12 people up here now, and honestly, if we spread ourselves out, you could spread across this vehicle and not see another person. It's that big. I think volume-wise, equivalent to the interior of a 747 or a little bit bigger. And it's just really, really impressive to know that as a volume and a total volume workspace, we can use every single one of the walls and every single one of these modules in a way that we just can't do on the ground. And so it makes for a really wonderful resource for science and living and just being up here floating around. It's great.
It's Chris Baltimore, the Houston bureau chief for Reuters News Agency, and I have a question about garbage, literally. How much trash does the ISS generate? Where do you put it? And do you recycle?
We do recycle certain things. We recycle our water and turn it into, or our urine and turn it into water, and that's very helpful because disposing of that and disposing of any trash is quite a challenge. Right now, believe it or not, we don't have a whole lot of what's called common trash on board, which is basically the garbage we generate from our food and our clothing. And that's because we've recently had 2 Progress vehicles depart, and our cosmonaut colleagues were very efficient in getting them loaded with. We had probably about 11 or 12 very large garbage bags, like a outdoor kind of garbage bag filled with trash, and we were able to get rid of those. And generally, though, the trash stays in a certain area of the node, as well as there's a certain area in the Russian segment where some trash stays, and it stays there until we can dispose of it, and we can dispose of it probably on average every 2 to 3 months when we have a vehicle that departs and generally burns up in the atmosphere.
Discovery ISS, this is Houston ACR. That concludes questions from JSC. Please stand by for a voice check from Kennedy PAO. Kennedy PAO.
Discovery ISS, this is KSC PAO. How do you hear me?
We have you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the International Space Station.
Hello, this is Marcia Dunn of the Associated Press with a question for Katie Coleman. There's great interest in R2 all the way up to the President of the United States, and I'm wondering, will the robot's unveiling be moved up considering all the interest, and how excited are you to work with the robot?
Well, I think we've all been voting to move up getting him out of his box. In fact, we're all pretty sure that we hear scratching from the inside there. There's a very elaborate choreography of all the things that have to come out of the PMM and get stowed different places, and folks on the ground are working real hard at that, and we'll see if we end up being able to bring Robonaut out before Discovery leaves. I'm really not sure. I am looking forward to working with him. You know, as we bring robots up into space, one of the reasons to do that is just to understand, A, how to work with them, and B, just the mechanics of how they work and how that's affected by zero-G. We want to learn those lessons here on the inside of the space station before we send them out to the outside of the space station or to other planets, which we need to be able to do in terms of exploring both as, a human presence and a robotics presence. It'll take both of those to get us further out into the universe, and Robonaut is a good first step.
Thank you. And for Steve Bowen, it's been a real whirlwind for you the past month. I'm wondering, are you pinching yourself that you're even in space on this mission and have had a chance to go spacewalking? And how are you going to make it up to Tim Cropra when you get back on Earth?
I am pinching myself, and there's no possible way I can make it up to Tim. But, Tim did an incredible job putting this together. It's the only reason we were so successful outside. He really did a fantastic job. So if there's anything I can do for him, I'm willing to discuss it.
Yeah, hi, guys. It's Bill Harwood with CBS News, and I have a question for Alexander Kaleri and for Scott Kelly. First, for Alexander Kaleri, were you looking forward to the Soyuz fly-around? Were you disappointed that got called off? And for Scott Kelly, how do you balance the risk versus the benefit of a picture like that versus everything that goes into undocking and flying around? Thanks.
Yes, we were going to fly around and we were ready, but now we have no decision for this operation. So I think it would be unique pictures of the International Space Station with modules of all the international partners, but unfortunately we don't do this.
Well, I think the value of those pictures are, clear. There is a value to it, but it's kind of hard to measure it. It's very subjective, in my opinion, and the risk is something you can quantify, although we never got far enough along in the process for me to actually see the hazard analysis associated with doing a fly around. So, there are advantages to doing it, and there are disadvantages to doing it. And, both programs weighed those and came up with the decision not to do it. And, I'm really not familiar with the details of exactly how they came to that decision. But, as a crew, we support the decisions that are made by our leadership.
Hi, this is Emily Baldwin from Astronomy Now magazine in the UK. It's always really amazing seeing views of the Earth from space, and I'd certainly be interested to hear your comments on any Earth observation you've done this mission. But what I'd really like to know is, do you do any nighttime astronomical observations, and if so, what?
Well, hello to the UK, and let me get the first part of that. The Earth views are just stunning. It's very, very difficult to explain them to people. Even pictures don't do it justice, and your senses can be really overwhelmed by how beautiful the Earth is. I want to mention to the UK that we actually have a medallion up here struck in honor of James Cook. This was commissioned about 5 years after his death. And we're very, very happy to have that and to honor the rich maritime legacy of world discovery that the UK has. As far as astronomical observations, one of the problems is that we're moving around the Earth at 17,500 miles an hour. It'd be kind of difficult to train onto something unless we were really more mechanically equipped to do that. We keep our space station oriented so that we're looking belly to the ground most of the time, and that's comfortable to us for a lot of reasons, and we get really good ground views that way. Now, having said that, we have some very good cameras on board, and we're able to take some astrophotographs that don't require much in the way of exposures. But most of these are Milky Way shots and aurora shots, and they're quite spectacular, but nothing compared to what the Hubble can do.
Thank you. And my second question, Apollo inspired the children of the 60s and the 70s, the Shuttle, the 80s and 90s, and the early 21st century. With the Shuttle program retiring, how do you think we'll be able to inspire future astronauts?
Well, you know, I think the space program in general is inspiring, and I think, you know, our country and certain countries around the world have a strong history of exploration and now exploration in space. And I think even when the shuttle retires, we're going to continue that. We're still going to have a space station. It's still going to be supported by astronauts and cosmonauts from around the world. And I think, you know, we're going to have a program beyond this. We're not sure exactly what it is right now, but you know, someday humans are going to venture again beyond low Earth orbit, back to the moon and Mars and other destinations in our solar system. And it's, you know, something I think can inspire kids, and it's something that we all can be proud of.
Hi, it's James Dean from Florida Today. For Nicole Stott, if you could put yourself back in the shoes of the ground teams here at KSC who are going to be watching you return and seeing Discovery land for the last time. Wondered if you could, just looking at it from their perspective, try to describe just how emotional and difficult you think that's going to be for those folks on the ground as they see you come in, including many who are going to be working their last launch or last landing.
Well, I'd like to include us as a crew in that ground team at that point. I think, as Steve and Scott may have mentioned earlier, this it's going to be a sad day. I think we all, I know, appreciate the legacy and the history and the really fine work that the Space Shuttle has done. And it's going to be hard to walk away from Discovery on the runway that day, knowing it's the last time that this really magnificent, seemingly brand new to us vehicle, and the way it's just wonderfully performed, is going to be retired. What I like to think is going to happen, and after speaking to a lot of people down at Kennedy Space Center while we've been down there for some training and in the different facilities, it seems that there is just an abundant pride in everyone and the work that they've had the opportunity to do on these vehicles. And it just shines through. And it shines through in, you know, in the fact that Discovery is in the shape that she is right now. And I think everybody is proud to have been a part of this program. Everybody will be sad to see it ending, but I think that in the end we'll be taking the time to celebrate just what a wonderful program and all of the experiences that we've gotten out of it.
Thanks. And for Dr. Barrett, I wondered if you could describe, as you begin your reentry and begin feeling the effects of the atmosphere for the first time in a couple weeks, what are you guys going to be feeling physically? What types of things are your bodies going to be experiencing, and how different do you think that's going to be from your Soyuz return?
That's a great question. The big difference between this and the Soyuz return is that one came after about 6.5 months up here. So I had that much time to decondition in the weightless environment and to train hard with my countermeasures. For us, with a 13 or 14-day flight, a couple of weeks, you don't decondition quite that much, but you also don't quite get on the top of your game for countermeasures. So I think I'll probably look very much like the typical people that we see coming down. We're seated upright compared to the Soyuz, so the gravity gradient is pulling the blood out of our head rather than going through our chest, which is a much friendlier orientation. However, the G-loads are quite a bit gentler in the shuttle. They're about maybe 1.2 for several minutes, 15-plus minutes, rather than peaking up to 4.5 and sometimes even 5 Gs for a few seconds in the Soyuz. But I can tell you that 1.2 Gs will feel like 3 or so after being up here for quite a while. But we have G-suits that are going to keep that blood flowing to our heads, and we have fluid loading that we do that tries to get our vascular volume up again. And for the most part, people do fairly well. And you'll see in the post-flight film, but hopefully you'll see 6 happy people walking around under Discovery after landing.
Discovery ISS, this is Houston ACR. That concludes questions from KSC. Please stand by for a voice check from ESA.
ISS, this is ESA PO Jules Grand-Cyr in S-Train in Rome. How do you hear us?
Answering Rome, we have you loud and clear. Welcome on board the International Space Station.
From ESA, thank you to Commanders Kelly and Lindsay having us participate in this event. First question for Commander Kelly, how it is on station while having vehicles and components from all program partners?
Well, I think it's one of the great things about this program. It's an international program. It shows how countries that cooperate can do great things. And building a space station such as the International Space Station is probably one of the most, significant engineering achievements that people have achieved. And we've done that with this international partnership that I think is really one of the highlights of this program.
Question to Paolo Nespoli.
Enrica Battifoglia, Agenzia ANSA.
And from the news agency, Enrica Battifoglia.
Una stanza tutta italiana della stazione spaziale.
And Paolo, today you're inaugurating the Leonardo module, an Italian room on the International Space Station. So what are the first operations that are going to happen on its interior? Good afternoon, Enrica. We're working very hard inside the Leonardo module because it came in a flight configuration. So everything is fastened in a way to secure it for launch. So we're removing all the packing materials, and so that we can stow it in the Japanese module that's going to be leaving soon. So we're using all the astronauts, including the Discovery crew, that are staying here another couple of days to help us with that.
Buonasera Paolo e buonasera.
Good evening, Paolo, and good evening to the whole crew. I'm from Sole 24 Ore newspaper. So in less than 2 weeks, on March 17th, it's 150 years of the unity of Italy. So how do you plan on celebrating aboard the International Space Station, an event that's so important for the nation? Surely, this is a very important holiday for our country. I'm a little limited in being able to celebrate. I have brought a little flag that I will be able to fly on that day, and from the cupola, which is also an Italian product. Seeing Italy from up here is a beautiful view, and I have tried to have everyone partake in it by sending pictures. And it's a country that stands out from the Mediterranean, both during the day and at night. It's easy to see how beautiful it is from a geographical and natural point of view, and we have to keep it in that way.
Buongiorno a tutti, sono Francesca Rinaldi.
Good day to everyone. Francesca from Radio Rai. Paolo, you see the sun setting and rising every 90 minutes, so you have 45 minutes of light and 45 minutes of day. Do you realize that? And how do you manage to keep the time?
We're
here inside the space station. We have some viewports that are not always open because most of the times they have to stay closed because we're maneuvering outside. We live our days based on the clock and the time that is given to us, which is fixed on the Greenwich Mean Time of London. And the mission control centers work to give us some sort of standard work hours. So we usually work from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. with about an hour break for lunch. And in this way, we kind of fix our day. When we go to the cupola, it's a little strange because we're looking outside and it's day or light, depending on where you are, what time. So you're a little disoriented from this coming and going of sunset and sunrise, but it's extremely beautiful to see the world turning around you within the time of one day.
Ciao Paolo, è Paolo D'Angelo.
Hi Paolo, this is Paolo D'Angelo. I wanted to know if you've touched the moon, if you've touched the moon rock that the Apollo 11 astronauts have brought back, which is now on board the ISS. Hi Paolo, yes, surely. It's on the cupola. And this moon rock has also been on top of Everest with Scott Berezinski, so it's a rock that has been all over the place. I have touched it, I've seen it. It's very interesting. It's stimulating to know that that rock has been on such a tour and it's with us today. But it also shows us that we need to continue our exploration, come back to the moon, and go to Mars. This will surely be our goal in the future.
Ciao Paolo, Letizia Leviti.
Hi Paolo, Letizia Leviti from Sky 24. Some people are going to be leaving soon for what is going to be a tourism trip. And what do you think of that? And do you think their dreams coincide with some of your dreams? I'm convinced that space tourism will be one of the new frontiers that will be opening in space. When I got here, in the first place, when we had a little more time to get used to the absence of gravity and I had a little more time to get used to it, I really thought that it's really a shame that so many people on Earth cannot see this. So surely in the future this will change, and it will be a pleasure to have the opportunity for everyone to come up here, spend some time here, and be able to see Earth and experience the absence of gravity. This is surely something that will happen in the future, and I hope that it will happen sooner rather than later.
Enrica Battifoglia.
Enrica Battifoglia. So Earth, seen from up there, is beautiful. But a lot of things are happening on Earth that are changing. In North Africa, for example, there are very important changes. How do you perceive these changes up there? Yes, we're a little bit isolated up here. We do receive news We have pieces of newscasts that we receive. I read some newspapers in the little bit of time that I have. I read them. It's interesting to understand how the world keeps going. From up here, it looks still, but it's still going. And sometimes I look down when we fly over North Africa, and I try to see if I can see something, but I don't see anything. I don't see anyone. I would like to be able to see people down there and what's going on, but I don't see it. But I do know, and we all know, that things are happening, and this is history continuing on, and we are certainly with all those down there who are trying to have a better life and a better future. And again, Massimiliano, I wanted to ask you, you're more or less halfway through your mission, and what do you expect at this point, and are you missing Earth at this point? Yes, my halfway point was passed a few days ago, and I'm beginning to not feel like I just got here, so that I don't have to ask Scott where things are, and questions about this or that procedure. I feel like I'm feeling a little bit more at home now, not such a guest anymore. I also like working. I find more enjoyment in working, because initially I was a little afraid of what I was doing. I didn't want to create some disaster, and now I'm a little more comfortable. But I expect that this is going to get even better, and I expect that I'm going to have a little more time to enjoy the views from the outside and the work inside. For the time being, I'm not missing Earth. I do talk to my wife and my daughter, who's growing up. We talk almost every day, and we have video conferences every couple of weeks. I would love to see them and hug them and go out with them, but it's not that feeling of missing that is destroying me. It's fine. Jokingly, a week ago, I sent a message asking if they would send me a pizza. So actually, maybe the one thing that I miss is a good, healthy pizza.
Discovery ISS, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.